All right, this one's coming from Bauchi State. Bauchi State Emergency Management Agency has confirmed the death of 4 people as floods continue to affect some communities in the state. The Director General of the agency, Mashood Aliyu, confirmed this in an exclusive interview with newsmen. He explained that the 4 deaths occurred in flood-ravaged communities in Shira, Jade, and Katagum local government areas of Bauchi State. The DG added that in the 3 local governments, large farms have been submerged with flood. He also mentioned the destruction caused by the flood, including a damaged bridge that has left travelers stranded. It said in Katagum, a road has been cut off on the way to Bukachua, and another road from Azare to Jamare. Similarly, 2 roads have collapsed. One from Azare to Ged and another from Shira to Azare, which may be cut off at any moment. He reiterated that thousands of hectares of farmland have been submerged by the flood. The SEMA director urged residents of the state living in waterways to vacate their houses as there are more threats of flooding in many areas. Newsmen also gathered from the caretaker committee chairman of Katagum local government area, Musa Azare, that a community, Sabongari, on the outskirts of Azare town, was completely submerged by the floods. He highlighted that a total of 35 communities across the local government were affected. The chairman also acknowledged the donation of food items and other domestic supplies by the state government to the affected communities. Also speaking, the caretaker chairman of the Shira and Jed local government areas highlighted the devastating impact of the flood. They lamented that the flood has submerged the entire communities, forcing displaced persons to seek temporary resettlement in centers. And in the same vein, the secretary to the Bauchi state government, Ibrahim Kashim, has urged the victims to accept the situation as part of their destiny. Kashim advised them to abide by the warning of the Nigeria agency regarding flood alerts. Ambassador.
It's quite unfortunate, and we'd like to sympathize with the families of the bereaved and the Bauchi state government, and to the entire Nigerians. You see, because of the way our country is, it's like we die here. The slogan that most people used to use, we die here. You know, what is that we die here means? It's like we don't have any option than to remain here. We have system, we have a government that is not proactive on issues. If you give ecological warning that there is going to be oncoming flood, what is the temporal provision, the measure that has to do with shelter, relocation of your citizens, of your indigents, amidst that for warning? So you would just go on television, pay the radio, television channels to inform the public that there is oncoming flood without putting up a measure. You will still take state government allocation, local government allocation, and continue with road, continue with a hospital project, continue with projects that is not very, very urgently needed. Sometimes we misplace priorities. Like I always say, governors, local government chairmen, president, and whosoever should not run the treasury, the resources of the state, the resources of the nation, of the local government, as your personal resources. You don't run it because you feel that when the flood come now, let them find their way.
And that's what they've been told to do.
Yes,
now,
and then
the premises.
yes, and yet you have just received allocation from the federal government. So can't humanity, can't wisdom, can't the love of your people, can't your responsibility of the welfare, can't your responsibility of protecting lives and properties be channeled to that threatened and red spots communities? So I think that it's a statement of a failed government.
All right, Mufasa.
Well, for me, let me equally add my voice to that of Ambassador here by extending my sincerest sympathy to the government and people of Bauchi State, especially those who have, been made to experience such calamity. And then again, I want to say that they say to be forewarned is to be forearmed, and most times I know that these warnings do come, and our people tend to be adamant.
From what angle to what angle?
Now, when I mean most times these warnings do come,
yes,
because I'm trying to reference the aspect where my colleague here said, we like to be reactive instead of being proactive. I know countless number of times that we've experienced flooding in some parts of this country. The Meteorological Agency of Nigeria, most times they've put this information out, even months before these things happen. This is not a flash flood. There are areas that are prone to flooding, and most times we get this information, but we tend to be adamant. We just want to wait, and when the flood comes, the effects, can be devastating.
By we, who are you talking about now? The government?
The people. I'm coming. The people.
Okay.
The people. That's why I said to be forewarned is to be forearmed. Now, of course, government has a responsibility to provide alternative shelter for people prior to the coming of the flood. I'm aware of some states where government will say move to high grounds. Of course, sufficient and adequate shelter, will not be said to have been made available for them. But you also need to consider your safety as a human being. To now have to begin to consider where to move to, because certainly this flood will come. And when you remain where you are until the flood comes, perhaps government has not come to forcefully take you out from your comfort zone. The consequences are usually there, like what we see today. That's why I said most times we don't take some of these warnings seriously, because assuming that even government was not alive to their responsibility by providing alternative shelter for the people can enforce, the people can agitate, the people can protest by saying that this is the information that we had, and this is not the first time. It has happened before. Sure. It has happened several times. Government, you must, because governance is about the people. Sovereignty resides with the people. As a people, you can force the hands of government to do what is right. But most times, these people, they just relax and believe that, a miracle can happen. So the people should let us learn from experiences. Let us learn from experience so that we don't begin to, suffer what we suffered in the past, like what we are seeing, the flood. Look at the farmlands that have been engulfed, by this. Lives have been lost.
And this is the time,
yes, and we are complaining of shortage of food and all of that. So
exactly.
I am appealing, as much as I know that government has a responsibility, I'm appealing to the people, because this is Bauchi today. It will certainly go around to some other flood-prone area, in quote, flood-prone. Let us not wait until the flood comes. We can begin to push.
Yes.
We can begin to agitate. We can begin to call on government. If you are saying we should go to high ground, you must. It has to be. In fact, it is their entitlement. It is not a favor. Your rights and privilege as a people is an entitlement. Is not something that the government should see as they are doing a favor. They must provide alternative place for them to go, so that they don't begin to have this kind of.
All right, I'll bring you in with the statement of the Secretary to the State Government of Bauchi that said the people should see it as their destiny. although advising them to vacate the premises. So let's get your thoughts on that.
Well, he has spoken that the poor man and the worst is always deserving to the poor. I think that's not a very good statement, because I understand that he's not an imam, neither is he a pastor for him to spiritual, though he's a spiritual person, but he's not a religious leader for him to talk about destiny. Because it is, if the church cannot provide for you, neither the mosque, they can use that word. But in a situation where it is your responsibility, how can you say it's the destiny of your citizens to suffer what they are going through?
That's wrong.
It's a very responsible statement. So I want to think that the secretary to the government should apologize to the citizens of Bauchi State. That's not a good statement. Now, what can they do? For instance, when flood comes, like my brother mentioned here, government will now begin to set up, what do you call it?
Tents and camps.
No, there is one committee they used to set up.
Okay. The emergency committee.
No,
flood committee.
Yes, flood. There's a committee they use. No, flood management committee. There's a committee for that.
Yeah,
where billions of naira will be allocated. And then somebody who have not bought car before will buy a new car from that money. Somebody who has parked his car for some months now will go and repair his car, build new houses from that money. And then you go and keep your citizens in a refugee place, a place that the health hazard is so untold. So what stops the government to, from being proactive by saying, we are envisaging this flood, so local government, please, can you go and get the data, get information from the indigenes of those communities? Let's make provision for a temporary rentage. If government have not finished building a kind of alternative home for our citizens in times of emergency. It's not out of place.
So what stops the government from doing that? Because it's obvious that it's not a case of them not being aware. This is not the first time we're having floods in those flood-prone areas in Nigeria. And then cases of when this happens and then people move to the to schools, probably secondary or primary schools around, you start hearing cases of the food that was distributed, because they talked about food items being distributed, not getting to all the families.
That's why.
Or there being issues with them not even seeing it at all. We just hear it in the news.
That's why we are saying that it's usually an act of a failed or a reactive government. If our governments are proactive, if our leaders are proactive, that money you use in setting up those committees most times would have been used ahead of time. Please, family, Adebola Adekumbo's family, this is the sum of 300,000 naira. In the northern states, rentage are not expensive. Please go and look for alternative home accommodation, but not in this area, because the flood is prone to that area. They will relocate.
Bauchi State is our focus here, but this is not just peculiar to Bauchi State. We have different states, even here in the south.
Even in River State.
Yes, where we keep hearing of the flooding year in, year out. And then it's still the same thing playing out in Bauchi, where you see that people are in primary schools and they're not getting the palliatives distributed by the government. That's the same thing that is replicating itself in every other state.
That's what I'm trying to
say. So this is more like a national
Nigerian
problem.
Issue. Of course. Even River States have flood experiences. That's why we are trying to use this medium to call on relevant government authorities not to wait for the time of the flood. If you envisage that it's going to come by the forecast, most time in so months, at a particular period of the month or year, release funds for your citizens. That's a school building alternative.
Yes. Is
very, very wicked actions of government. The environmental hazard it causes on your citizens are not okay. Health-wise, it's not okay. You have the money. Like sometimes 1 billion naira will be released for a particular local government to alleviate flood victims, right? And then what the committee will be doing is simply giving them food items. Is that correct? Providing health assistance to them. Whereas that 1 billion naira is being given to the citizens or indigents of that local government, my brother Mufasa, each person can get 1 million naira from that money. Which of course they would have gotten a better accommodation, right?
That's a better, that's an alternative. That's a better alternative.
It's much more better than giving
the money than actually. I thought you were going to mention setting up an actual.
No, you didn't get my point. I said
where these people can be until their houses are accessible.
What we are trying to say is that rentage is alternative accommodation. If government have not finished building, like I use this word, alternative home during times of emergencies for our citizens, if it happen to local government A, they can move in there. If it happen to local government B, they can move in there. It's alternative home for every citizen of the state. Now, if you have not been able to have this, because it's a case of emergency now, instead of setting up a committee and you give them 1 billion naira for the purposes of what? Palliative. For the purposes of trying to cushion their pains. That 1 billion naira, if it's going to be done in a sincere intent of the government, I'm saying that 1 billion naira to the committee is a sabotage and a waste. If you intentionally, before the time of the flood, give this money to these citizens or indigents, you can as well now force them out. Are you getting me? Because why? You have provided what? Alternative means.
All right, let's get your thoughts on that. Mufasa, do you agree? We are talking about the way forward now, how these can be well managed in the future.
My brother here has said a whole lot of things, and most of the things he has said are things that will definitely help the situation. We are talking about something that comes and goes. So whatever provisions you are making, it's a short gap measure. We know of committees and committees that that are usually set up when situation like this comes up, and most times people get these things as a way of enriching themselves. They squander the funds, mismanage it, and so the people who are the actual victims don't usually get the benefit of such money voted for catering for flood victims. But if you want to talk about giving out money to these people as a way of providing succor, perhaps maybe they can get a temporary place to stay when the flood comes and go back to their houses as soon as the flood goes back. I think that's equally a way of helping the people. Then I think the government can also look at trying to tackle the source. Should the governor or the government, should they look at dredging the rivers? Should they also look at constructing huge dams or drainage systems that can carry the weight of this flood when it comes? These are somehow sustainable solutions to some of this problem, because money all the time, most times it makes a few individuals become wealthy overnight, and that's not what the people want. When you say, okay, go and use to take care of the people, some great politicians keep it to themselves. So let us look at a way of trying to come up with permanent solutions to this problem. Build dams, build drainage system, giant ones that when the flood comes, it just flows away. When we consider these things, I'm sure that it will help to reduce the effects of these floods when it comes next.
All right.